Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We're here today on our third hearing on misinformation and disinformation. And I still don't think the American people are struggling to understand that not everything you read on the internet is true, and that politicians sometimes are known to lie. Three of my favorites, where we hear them all the time: if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Inflation is transitory. And a personal favorite, I was appointed to the Naval Academy in 1965. But we got a crisis on inflation, we got a crisis on the border, we have a crisis in crime, yet here we are again having a third hearing on misinformation and disinformation. You'd almost think that elections aren't breaking in favor of Democrats nationally. Statements like I read, they're wrong. But they don't demand government intervention. The government should not be the police of speech. I believe the American people are capable of forming their own opinions. It's actually why the First Amendment guaranteed that the government would not intervene. Our founding fathers believed that Americans had the right to debate ideas freely and then form their own opinions and exercise their right to vote. But let's talk about the disinformation campaign coming from the Biden administration. As I pointed out before, President Biden and Vice President Harris have continually spread misinformation. They continue to falsely accuse Republican-led states that have passed common sense election integrity laws of suppressing the vote, all in an attempt to push forward their partisan legislations like H.R. 1. President Biden was even called out by the Washington Post for his claims about the new Georgia election law. But his claims weren't only proven false when we saw record turnout later in Georgia in the primary of 2022. Last week, as the Select Committee on the Economy, of which I'm a ranking member, we held our first hearing at the U.S.-Mexico border in McAllen, Texas, Democrats and Republicans. However, the Democrats called the hearing not to discuss the border crisis, but instead to talk about infrastructure and green energy. Apparently, and continually, many on the left want to ignore the crises that our country is facing because it doesn't fit their narrative. I was in McAllen, Texas, as I was saying, the 34th district, right next to the 34th district, which is 85% Hispanic in population, where a Republican, Mayra Flores, won an election. She's the first Mexican-born woman to serve in Congress. She's also the first Republican elected to represent this area of the Rio Grande Valley in more than 150 years. And if you're listening to past committee hearings, you'd listen and you'd hear the outgoing majority would have you try to believe that the only reason for the loss is because Hispanic voters are being targeted with disinformation. But it couldn't be further from the truth. Representative Flores focused on two key issues important to her community: the issue of record high inflation and the out-of-control border crisis. Is it disinformation to point out that the country is facing the worst inflation environment in 40 years? Or that last month, 240,000 individuals were apprehended illegally crossing the United States-Mexico border? Who knew that voters in Texas didn't like paying $5 a gallon for gas or having to deal with record illegal immigration? It's almost like it doesn't matter if you're from Janesville, Wisconsin, or McAllen, Texas, or vacationing in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. People want to be able to afford gas, their groceries. People want to have a safe community for themselves and their families. So instead of attacking key voter integrity provisions and undermining trust, we should instead be working to restore faith in our elections. The American people will continue to see through the misinformation of this administration, as we have seen in Texas and in Georgia. The truth will continue to prevail, and our republic will continue to endure as long as we empower the American people and keep the government out of the business of policing speech. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.